Hey there, and thanks for watching another episode of NetCLIX and Chill. This is episode number 8, and we're going to be talking about the brand new rulebook for HEROCLIX, as well as the new Powers and Abilities card. Just came out today, August 21st of 2017, and we were going to kind of highlight the changes that we see in the Powers and Abilities card. We're not really touching on the ones that didn't have any changes at all. And then we're doing a few of the changes that happen in the core rules. But it doesn't really look like there are a whole lot that are game-changing other than objects. But yeah. My name's Jimmy.
And I'm Daniel. And yeah, like Jimmy said, we are going to just give you a rundown on a lot of the new stuff. We're not going to cover all of it. There's some of it we might get wrong. We've even learned new stuff just sitting down to record this video. So you want to just dive in and we'll talk about that first?
Yeah, and when he says new stuff, it's kind of funny. As I was going through here, there were a few things that I was like, oh, that's new. And then we talked about it and it was like, you know, I don't think that is new. Like, I'm not really sure if it is new or not. I could probably just look at the old rule book, but who cares about old rules now?
Yep.
The whole +1 breakaway from smaller characters, I always thought if you were a giant, part of Giant Stride was just, you know, +2 breakaway. So I was like, oh, +1 breakaway if you're bigger. That makes sense. And if you're 2 steps bigger, you automatically break away. That might not be news to any of you, but it was news to me.
Well, I think part of that is because we've been in and out of the game so much and there's been small changes. But what this is doing is it's taking all of those small changes, combining them, simplifying them, and taking the opportunity to make some big changes, rebalance a couple things. So a lot of the changes are pretty small too, like Telekinesis, for example. The only difference I really could see is they shortened the range on Telekinesis a little bit. Yeah. But it functions the same otherwise, which kind of fits, because TK has always been 8 spaces since the beginning of the game. At the beginning of the game, 10 range wasn't uncommon, 8 was average. Now, if you have 9 range, you're a sniper, and the average is like 5. So they're just rebalancing a lot of things to make everything line up and just mesh more even and more balanced, which is the ultimate goal. Is they understand that there will be pieces that are stronger than other pieces, but overall they want to rebalance everything.
And I think that they did a really good job of making the game feel good. As I was going through these powers, I saw that there were a lot of much needed changes. I like them a lot more than I thought that I would. You've got a few where it was like, that's not that great, but most of them I feel like didn't affect the game as badly, and a lot of them that I like to use were actually buffed. Alright, so we're just going to go through this power by power, talk about what changes have been made to some powers of note, and then how we think it'll affect the game, how we like or dislike the power. The first one we've got here is Mind Control. We've talked about this a little bit in a previous podcast.
Yeah.
Go ahead and explain it.
Alright, basically what they're doing with Mind Control now is you roll the attack. If it's successful, the character becomes friendly to your force. You may move it up to its speed value and then either make a close or a ranged attack. You don't get to use any of its abilities. A big emphasis in these rules changes is positioning. It's not so much about taking over their Tentpole and sniping a support piece as it is putting that Tentpole in the middle of your team into a kill zone so you can try to take it out. And if you make an attack, great, but the purpose of Mind Control now is just to move a piece. So it's noticeably weaker in the sense that you don't get to use their powers and abilities, but getting to move and attack with like a bruiser like Hulk, that's actually probably better. Or you can just grab a Tentpole, bring it into a kill zone, and beat up on it.
I think it does reduce their speed by half, though.
Does it have
it says it halves their speed, and then they can move that new speed value.
Okay, so
and then make an attack. Or they can attack and then move. So what I like about that is, one, again, it kind of sucks that you can't use things like Psychic Blast, because now Psychic Blast and stuff like that, they're power actions. It's mostly going to be used for, I'm going to do an attack, and then I'm going to use them to no longer tie up my character. So if you've got like somebody who really needs to be repositioned, or you've got a character just destroying your support piece, you mind control them, run them away from them, and then attack, or you can even attack somebody who is also adjacent, kill them, and then run them away so that they have to spend the next turn trying to get into close combat again.
Yeah, one thing I do like about it is when you look at like my Shredder team I was playing in the last podcast, if I have all 5 of those pieces around one enemy piece, then I mind control it, move it away like 3 spaces, shoot at someone if I can, and then everyone gets to sidestep up again. The positioning game is pretty important, so just having small things like that it can end up having a big impact on the game.
Yeah. And one thing we should probably explain a little bit of before we start moving forward, the wording of all the powers have changed, and the reason for that is they have simplified what powers are. So there's no longer like close combat actions, range combat actions, power actions, free actions. You've got things that are just powers at no cost, which is a free action. You've got close actions.
Exploit weakness. Exploit weakness is close, you may do whatever. Now, the way it works is it's all keyword based. So it'll have close at the beginning of the power in all capitals. Now when you look at charge, charge says power, you have speed, and then move, and then you make close at no cost. So what it's doing is in the power it's saying you may close. Now you just scan the powers and abilities card, and if it says close, okay, I get to use it.
Yeah.
They're simplifying it so you can combine powers and they blend a lot better. And then in the rule book it explains what each type is, which is similar to how it is now. Put an action token on them, they may make a close combat attack. Range is same thing. It's functionally the same, but they did clean it up a lot.
For like new players that need to figure out what powers will work together, I remember that was one of the biggest struggles getting into this game for the very first time when the game was kind of in its inception. There were so many things where you're like, close combat action, like power action that grants close combat actions, like what am I doing here?
Why can't I Blades Claws exploit? I can charge Blades and exploit, but I can't do any of those with combat, close combat expert.
And like, why does this judge say I can and this judge say I can't? Like it's really weird.
Like now you can't, it's really hard for someone to try to argue against it because the rules are very black and white.
But one thing I do want to point out is that it only counts as the keyword that would qualify another power if it is in all caps. So if you have somewhere in the sentence close, like in Blades, Claws, Fangs, it has lowercase close, that doesn't qualify automatically as able to be used with a close action. If it has a lowercase close, then it doesn't qualify as an uppercase close.
Mind Control is a great example of that because it says it may make a ranged or close attack. They're lowercased, so they do not get to use Psychic Blast or anything that would have the all caps range keyword.
Right.
So
yeah, there are a lot of changes that are like that, and just inspect the powers and abilities card. You'll quickly become familiar with it, even definitely for seasoned players who kind of already knew how the powers would work, because this is designed for new players who are just trying to figure out the game. Yeah. And I think that it does a really good job of that. You can see a theme that these rules are going to change how the meta is played, I think. And the reason for that is the meta for the past like season or two has been all about the Alpha Strike, where you're just trying to kill the big target. They really reduce the amount of damage you can do while moving across the board all at once. So you can see that in changes to Telekinesis. The range has been reduced to 6 spaces instead of 8. I think that that'll actually have a pretty big effect on the game because you're not going to be able to taxi your heavy hitter across the board as easily. Saw that with the change of Super Strength not being used with Hypersonic anymore. So you can't have somebody run 15 spaces across the field with an Ultra Heavy and hit you for 8 damage. Yeah. So you're not just getting nuked before you can get out of your starting zone.
But what they do allow for is you're still able to pick up the object while you're using Hypersonic. So if you finish adjacent to an opposing character, the next turn you get that big hit. So instead of it being an Alpha Strike, it's encouraging you to kind of stay around, and they're not punishing you as much if someone outwits your Super Strength. You don't drop the object anymore, you just can't use it in the attack. So it takes away your ability to make an object attack with a heavy while Super Strength is outwit. You can still make an object attack with a light regardless of Super Strength.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's actually a different change to the core rules, not so much the powers, but any character can now pick up a light object and it still changes your damage in close combat by 1. So somebody who doesn't have Super Strength can pick up that chair and bash somebody over the head. Yeah. I think that makes sense, and up to this point I have been super hating on the object rules. I now understand why they did it, and I'll explain that once we get to the Super Strength portion of the Powers and Abilities card. But I think that Super Strength definitely has its place now, but I think that they did that in order to reduce the amount of Alpha Strike, which I think is actually good for the health of the game. I think that this Power and Abilities card itself has changed the game in a positive direction. Another thing that kind of reduces the whole move really quickly and then just Alpha Strike the other team, your Flight ability. Now your speed is reduced by 1 for every character you carry, even considering vehicles and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's not just from flight. The carry ability itself states that.
Right.
So no matter the source of your carry ability, so it's kind of weird on some things like what was it, the beetle or
The bug.
The bug. Have you read the vehicle special rule yet? Because maybe they address it there, but
I saw in the vehicle specifically it says that you can carry characters. You can use the carry ability, but to carry up to your passenger limit. But it doesn't say anything about excluding the new carry limitations. But the thing is, still considering the health of the game, being able to carry 8 figures across the board with no issue is still pretty freaking busted. So like, I remember people hated whenever I put the beetle down and I was playing it just with the bug. I was just playing it as a Justice League International theme team piece. And people were seriously just like grumbling and like throwing their hands up whenever I'd win. And it was just like, well, it's true. It was busted as crap. And I think that changes like this will help to kind of mediate that a little bit. I understand why they're doing things. It really sucks because you see certain pieces that you love to use in certain ways really just die. Like Green Lantern being able to carry 8 people now. You know, you got a speed of 9. I'm going to carry these people one space. Like, that's cool.
and now none of them can take an action. Like, that was definitely worth it.
Yeah, but I can understand why they're doing it. There are certain limitations that really make some characters feel weak, but you just have to use them in a different way. Being able to carry 3 characters even is still pretty good for your positioning, and you're not going to take that much of a hit. Just don't carry your entire team. And, you know, you're paying a reasonable cost at that point.
And sometimes, like, being able to just pick all 8 pieces up and then, like, pivot, basically, and just reposition them based on your opponent's position, that could be useful, too.
But, at the same time, a person who can only carry 1, so we're talking about the ones that, you know, their movement really sucks because they carry 8 people at a time. But when you carry 1, it's actually better than it used to be. You no longer have the speed reduced by 2, and for characters who are trying to running shot and use somebody, like carry somebody at the same time, you have a movement of 10. Usually it would go down to an 8 before being halved, and then you would...
It will just replace the modifier.
Right, so it
would actually be halved and the -2.
And then you'd -2.
So you'd have a 3 speed.
Right, now you're going to be moving, it'll reduce it by 1 after halving to a 4. So it's still a little better.
Yeah.
And then moving in general is going to be better because now you're moving 9 instead of 8.
Yeah,
so
basically... the carry rules, it's better if you're carrying like just your standard flyer, it's better. If you're a taxi, it's the same until you carry 3 or more people. So like the Overdrive Sinister Syndicate team is like, it's worse technically, but it's 1 less space. It's annoying, but it's not like game-breakingly terrible. Well, maybe it's 2 less, because I think you carry Mysterio too. So 2 less spaces than normal. You have Sidestep to make up for it, because Sidestep is not, it doesn't say anything about moving your speed value, you just move 2 spaces, and the carry directly affects your movement value.
Yeah, it says reduce your speed by 2 when moving. So
and if you always want to get crazy too, the rule of 3 takes the sum of all modifiers and then checks. So you can, if you have the right modifiers, you can get +6 speed, carry 3 people, you're still at a +3 speed. So there's ways to work around it. Samantha Wilson does that really well.
Dude, we haven't been considering that in this entire discussion yet. You can't reduce your speed by 8. It's a reduction of 3 anyway. You could carry 8 and it would only reduce it by 3.
The rule of 3.
The rule of 3 just mediated that.
Okay, so it's only worse by 1 if you carry 3 or more people. That's a good change. Next.
So just ignore everything that we just said. Yep. The next one we were wanting to talk about actually coincides with that conversation a little bit because it's about Hypersonic. Hypersonic now specifically says that you have a passenger limit of 0 whenever you're using the power. So it is a power action and it just grants a close attack but not keyword close. So you can't use things like Flurry, which is a close action.
This is my favorite change in the Powers and Abilities card because they made Blades pretty much work with the same powers as before. The reason I like it so much is now it's when you would deal normal damage from a close attack, and that is keyword close, all caps or whatever, you may roll a d6 and deal that damage instead. Minimum result, the character's printed damage value -1. Where this is the best, in my opinion, is characters with a 3 damage going against anything, pretty much anything at all. Because Sure, you have a 33% chance of rolling a 1 or a 2, but even if you roll those, it's minimum 2. So like you will always be able to deal damage to someone with toughness, regardless of what you roll. So it's literally worth the gamble all the time. You have what a 66% chance of dealing your damage value or better. 3, 4, and 5, that middle range, it feels a lot safer to roll. Because if you're trying to get that push for that little bit of extra damage, you can get it, and if you roll a 1 and you have a 5 damage, you roll a 1, you're still dealing 4. It's not like you're all or nothing anymore. So it's really, they took out a lot of the risk, but there's still enough to where you won't, it's not just an automatic, I might as well do this, but there's a lot more instances where I'll want to use it.
Yeah. And then energy explosion. That's something that we had talked about before.
I don't like this change personally. It's range quake without the knockback.
Yeah. But, you know, if you have that and force blast at the same time, you can knock back all of them. Because it says knockback characters who are targeted and hit or whatever. And energy explosion just says that all of the characters adjacent to the target are also targeted by the attack. And then it deals 2 damage instead of normal damage.
But it says that they're targeted by the attack, so you have to hit each individual defense value to hit them.
I think that was always true, though.
I didn't think so before.
I
don't know. I don't use the power very often. But either way, now in the new rules, as soon as the Mighty Thor is released, these rules take effect. Now you have to hit all the defense values. So whether or not you did before, you do now.
Yeah. Alright, so next, we're going to be talking about Super Strength. So, after all of the wind-up about this power, we finally see the actual version, and it may have already been leaked, and I was just unaware of the secondary effect.
It was already there.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it, but with seeing the other changes, it makes a lot more sense and it makes the power feel better than it did before. I still don't like it.
I love it.
Jimmy loves it.
I think it's fantastic.
But Force Blast was already in the game and had the same effect and no one cared.
When they changed Force Blast to knock somebody back anytime you made an attack, I also loved that power. It's just nobody has it because nobody wanted it. Because whenever I first got into the game, Force Blast was a power action to roll a d6 and push him back that number. It sucked. And then they changed it to be like Force Blast. Anytime you hit somebody with a ranged attack, they fly back the number of damage, like it's automatic knockback. Now, freaking Super Strength makes it to where not only can you carry heavy objects, which objects, let's be frank, suck now. But with Super Strength, it now creates knockback, and you get to choose to deal knockback. So you don't like lose your target every time you use Super Strength. But for characters with like Hypersonic and Super Strength, like we were talking about, was such a garbage idea. This, I think, redeems it. And the reason is, controlling the opponent's positioning is like the biggest part of this game. So having a character that can, you know, let's come back to the 170-point Shazam that we were talking about in the last episode. Moves 15 spaces with flight. He can go wherever the frick he feels like. He runs to the other side of the opposing character who is just wailing the poop out of everybody. Yes, he only deals 5 damage now. He can't pick up an ultra heavy, beat the crap out of them with a super heavy hit, but what you can do is basically position where you want them to be by knocking them back. So you can knock them towards your team, you can knock them away from a person that they're attacking. So being able to control that character's position while also doing damage is, I think, a super great benefit.
As we saw with the PIM Pocket Tank, that can get overwhelming very quickly. And another thing is, like, it breaks Mastermind. Like, okay, you can Mastermind this off to the lackey next to you, but then that lackey gets knocked back and you're isolated. It also will affect your opponent's positioning when you're guaranteed knockback. Do I really want to get to the rim of that elevated, or are you going to run behind me and knock me off of it? Suddenly, that Shazam's dealing 7 damage because he hit you for 5. You probably lost your damage reducers, you fall on the ground and take 2 more. And it also makes the knockback resistance granted by charge and combat reflexes consistently more relevant instead of just when your opponent rolls doubles replaced with Quake.
Yeah, and I love it because I also feel like it's very thematic. I do totally think it makes sense for, like, you know, Superman to fly up and punch somebody in the face and for them to fly backwards. Yeah. I love it. I think that it's great for the game, and I think it's great for the theme.
Yeah, so, thematically it's awesome. I really like that, and I like that not all hypersonic characters do it, but all characters Super Strength do. So yeah, it makes total sense. Someone strong enough to throw a car at you, if they punch you in the chest, you're not just going to stand there.
Yeah. So I have amended my opinion of super strength.
To an extent.
To an extent. But thank you, NECA, for showing me the light. Next one, we're talking about Smoke Cloud. I love Smoke Cloud. I've used it for years because I loved the whole like Batman stealth element thing.
But it has been overall kind of just okay.
Yeah. But they finally put a little bit more utility on it. The only change that they really made, well, one of those changes is great, but they have one change that creates an attack debuff, so any opposing character that is inside of one of these hindering terrain tokens created by Smoke Cloud also has -1 to their attack as long as they're in it. So close combat or range combat attack.
I think that might have also been one of the more recent changes that we just overlooked.
Yeah.
I can't
well,
remember.
If that was true, I didn't realize.
But either way, it's concrete now. We know it now. That's cool. And it's better because Smoke Cloud now persists. Whether you lose it, you get KO'd, you push off of it, that Smoke Cloud stays until the beginning of your next turn. So it's a hindering terrain marker, so for someone to leave it, they have to have their speed. And they have -1 attack if they don't choose to leave it. So it has a lot more tactical use than it did before.
Yeah. And also, in a similar whole run of things, Barrier was also changed to where it is now persistent. Meaning, if you have a character with Barrier, and the only purpose that they have is to put up a barrier, but they already have an action token, and you have to push to do it, and they would otherwise lose it, which I've had that happen so many times, where I'm just like, I really don't know this character well enough. I really need this wall to go up, and I'm going to push them to do it, and then they lose it, and then the wall goes down, and it literally just took a click and an action to do nothing. Somebody outwits your barrier, the barrier doesn't go down. They literally have to destroy it. I think that's great, because your tactical ability to be able to use a power that wouldn't usually be worth a power action for a lot of people, I think that is going to add a lot of tactical elements to restricting your opponent's movement, again, and their attack options, just by having 1 or 2 utility characters that can put up a wall every once in a while.
And to go back to Super Strength, Barrier with Super Strength, since Super Strength generates knockback, you can barrier behind people and knock them into it. So no, you don't get a Hypersonic and then hit with the object, but you can Hypersonic and punch someone into a wall that you put there with someone else. So it makes how your pieces work together is a lot more important now than the Alpha Strike. If you want an Alpha Strike, you have to dedicate more to it.
Yeah. Next one we're talking about is Precision Strike. This is another change that I didn't really like.
It sucks.
I really liked Precision Strike when it first came in because there are a lot of low point characters, and in this era they have really high defenses, and then you've got a lot of characters now that have shape change and super senses at the same time.
They're already hard enough to deal with. Like, finally they gave us Precision Strike, it was an answer to it. It was nice. If a character like SpiderMan was supposed to be able to dodge regardless, they got that special power. Like, this change to Precision Strike, I think, was completely unjustified and unnecessary, and it sucks, and I hate it.
Yep, they made it to where when you roll super senses against somebody with Precision Strike, your die roll is -1. So you break away, so you super sense on a 6.
And it's only against super senses. So Kingdom Come still evades on a 5+. If you have any other source for evading, you get it naturally. Where Precision Strike before, the attack could not be evaded, now it just says when they roll super sense, -1.
It was already situational enough, I think, but I don't know, because you've got Psychic Blast and stuff to go through normal damage reducing powers. This was the answer that they needed for super senses. And then you had Battle Fury to go against freaking
Shape Change.
Right, so it's like, why are you being so choosy in this element?
And Battle Fury still just, you can't use Shape Change. Psychic Blast, it deals penetrating, so you can't reduce it. Like, every other power and its counter, it's just that. A power that counters this power. You don't get to use this. Now Precision Strike is like, -1. So like, yes, it's a 1 in 16.5% chance that you're going to dodge it. But that's close enough in competitive play. And the fact that it doesn't get around the Kingdom Come team ability, it doesn't get around other sources of evading. Like, it's so much weaker now.
And I think, too, the whole thing of where it only affects one other power and it barely affects one other power, it makes me wonder how much they calculate this power into their points calculation for characters, because I would hope it would be like 1 point to put that stupid power all over the entire dial, because what is it giving you? You have very few characters you're going to run into that have a power that is going to interact with it, and then it barely does anything. So you're just like, why am I trying to prioritize putting this into my team whenever it's almost a waste of points because you know you had to pay for it somewhere.
And like a good character to look at now is Cosmic SpiderMan. He has Precision Strike at 275 and at 175, and then he has Psychic Blast at 75 points. The 75 point dial, the top click, is better than the others now because at least now he can ignore a power, get around powers, versus the others. I have a 275 point piece that against your 50 point 20 defense tie-up piece, okay, it's got a -1 to its evade roll if I hit.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so much weaker now that it just, I don't really want to see it on my dial. I'd rather have almost any other attack power. I'd rather have Blades, Claws, Fangs all day long. I'd rather have Psychic Blast, Poison, like so many other powers I'd rather have.
And that's really a shame because I loved seeing characters with 50, 60 points, 3 damage, and Precision Strike. It was a really good package because you were like, this character is my Swiss Army knife. He's going to go in and he's going to handle the other lower point characters that really can't afford a defense power that's going to reduce damage, so they try to evade it. And that was the answer. And now it's just kind of like, it's really not worth it because who knows what's really going to happen. The next one we were talking about is Poison. I love the change that they did to Poison.
The only reason I don't like it is because it doesn't work in tandem with Sidestep. I really liked that part of it. I think that it should still work that way, but every other aspect of Poison is a lot better. It just makes me sad because of that one interaction that I really liked.
Yeah, but the reason that it's different is it is now basically a free action. It doesn't have to happen at the beginning of the turn. So what that means is, and there is one restriction to it, you can only take it as a free action if your character hasn't been moved or placed that turn. So you can't have been carried, you can't have moved at all, and it has to be in your turn, so if somebody knocked you back or telekinesis you in the opponent's turn, it doesn't matter. But it also means you can't sidestep because you can't do that movement, but what you can do is activate it at any point during your turn as long as that character hasn't moved. That means that character can make an attack first, somebody else could outwit first before you use it, even though you could have done that first anyway. But I'm glad they didn't take that away because I had heard that because of the turn organization that they were trying to implement, that it would have taken away the possibility of Outwit and Poison working together, and that Poison was going to be bad because of it. But I think this makes it a little better.
Yeah. If they had left Poison as an at the beginning of the turn thing, it would be garbage. But because it can happen at any point in the turn, you can outwit other powers. Like, if I see someone that has Invincible, I outwit Invincible, I hit them for 4 or 5 damage, now they're on to combat reflexes, okay, now I want to Poison now. If there's characters away from me, I can Super Strength and knock them into my Poisoner, then he can Poison. So there's a lot more flexibility overall that I really like. But, I mean, really, yeah, the only negative is that you can't sidestep beforehand.
Because they were free actions you could stack.
But in any other way, it functions the same or better.
Yeah. But I understand why they did that too, because they would have had to specifically name sidestep because of the way that turn organization works now. So if they were like, you can't do anything before it except for sidestep if you move by sidestep.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I feel like if they would have worded it other way, it would have been clunky, or it would have allowed you to move your full movement or something first.
And it totally makes sense. Just
it's a little bitter taste.
That's my only pet peeve where same as like Super Strength Hypersonic. Overall, it's probably a good change, but being used to the way that powers worked before. Dude,
I'm gonna be using the crap out of that now. I totally.
For Super Strength?
Yes,
yeah.
and also Poison, because I used to be like, you don't know if you could do much with it.
It's situational. The sidestep made it less situational. Now it's still situational, but a lot more flexible.
You can plan with it now.
Yeah.
Where you could seriously make a team that's designed to place their characters near a character who has Poison and then also has a heavy hit. Or what I would love to do is basically push a bunch of people right next to this Poisoner who might also have access to something like Quake. So you basically push them all together, poison them all, and then quake them all to throw them away again. I really love the whole controlling the movement and then being able to do damage at any point in the turn. The next one on the list here was Telekinesis. We already kind of talked about that. The difference is from 8 to 6 spaces is the range that you're able to move a character, but it's a minimum of 6. By the way, it's 6 instead of 8. You can move people less of a distance due to Telekinesis now.
And objects are the same way. You can use TK to throw objects same way.
I also don't know if this was already done before, but you can also use it whenever you're based by somebody. So you can grab an object and use it as a ranged combat attack if you're based. The next one I thought was a little bit confusing, and that's the only reason I marked it. Otherwise, I liked the changes, is Mastermind. So both Mastermind and Leadership, will roll them together because the change is very similar. It used to be these powers could only be used on characters adjacent to you who are less points. And that really limited what you could do. Because you had like, you're like, oh, I have a 25-point Master Splinter with Leadership, and you're like, why? Why do I have it?
Like, if I roll a 5 or a 6, I get an extra action, that's it.
Yeah.
Now, Leadership, at the beginning of the turn, you just get 1 extra action.
Yeah.
Total, into your pool. Total.
At the beginning of the turn, you get +1. You don't have to roll the 5 or 6 to do it.
Yeah.
What the 5 or 6 does do is it makes it to where you can remove an action token, and this is Leadership. We started with Mastermind, now we're in Leadership, just because they're very similar. They you roll a 5 or 6, and you can remove an action token from a character regardless of point value if they share a keyword with you, and then of course any other case if they're less points.
Yeah, and Mastermind is the same way. So now you can have like your Joker, who should only be like 70, 80, 100 points tops. He can be running around with another Batman enemy like Clayface or someone who's going to be more points, but they share a keyword, and it totally makes sense for Joker to like grab Clayface and pull him in front of him. Okay, he gets hit instead of me. So it functions really well, but of course, like, your allies aren't going to jump in front of you if they don't give a crap about you. So if you don't share the keyword, they got to be a weak lackey who's afraid of you.
Yeah, but the wording in the change that's a little confusing to me is that it says you could allocate the damage to a character that wouldn't have been hit by the attack. And then it goes on a little later, and at first that meant to me a character who wasn't targeted, of course, wouldn't have been hit by the attack. But then after that it says allocate the damage even if the character wasn't targeted or the attack would have been illegal. It, to me, looks like whenever it says wouldn't have been hit by the attack, your total roll wouldn't have hit their defense, which makes it look like if you have a character with an 18 defense in Mastermind, and the fodder you would normally use is sitting behind him with a 16 or 17 defense, you literally can't allocate it because any attack that was made against you would have also hit him.
The way I'm interpreting it, mostly just because I want it to make sense, is it's trying to address every possible scenario. They're just not using enough words to address those scenarios. So, like, I'm trying to interpret it as if it, not just if I didn't target it, so if I have 2 bolts but I didn't put 1 bolt at that character, okay, it would not be hit. If it super senses out of it, it would not be hit. If it's behind a wall and you can't draw line of fire to it, it would not be hit. Stuff like that. I'm trying to just have it all together and make sense, but because of the part where it would be hit but it's an illegal target, like, there's just some wording that it makes it not make as much sense.
And I think the option that may make sense to why they worded it that way is things like Energy Explosion, where you try to mastermind the damage that you took onto a character that's already taking damage from that attack. And I know that was confusing for a lot of people. So in the case of the new Energy Explosion, you get hit and your mastermind fodder also gets hit. You're each taking 2 damage. You would try to mastermind into the other guy's damage, or onto the other guy, and then now he's taking a total of 4. But at what point is he taking the other 2? If he has something like invulnerability, is he taking 2 on top of that?
Well, I don't think he does take the. I don't think you can mastermind to him because.
And that's the wording.
That's to clarify.
Right.
That's what they're clarifying.
Well, I'm thinking that might be why they said it that way.
So, and in that situation, if you have 3 characters around him, my mastermind piece has a 16 defense, the guy next to me has a 17 defense, and the guy behind me has an 18 defense. If my opposing character has a 10 attack and rolls the 7, he hits the 16 and the 17, but not the 18. So I can only mastermind to that 18 defense behind me, even though he was a target of the attack, he was not hit. Right. So that's kind of where we're trying to make it make sense. and they're addressing that situation specifically, but the wording kind of rolls over itself and it doesn't really fit well.
Yeah, otherwise I think all of these rules are pretty clear,
Yeah.
but that is how we will be playing it until there is some type of clarification. I'm pretty confident that's what they were trying to say, but the only other option would be like if you have a character with a 16 defense with Mastermind and you've got a Mastermind fodder piece with an 18 defense, then if they roll a 17 or lower, then you can Mastermind it. But if they roll an 18 or higher, you just can't. And that is such a small window. Like they have to roll either the 16 or the 17 in order to hit you and not hit them. So it's just like Mastermind becomes almost useless at that point. So
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that's not what they meant.
And it's just weird in a rule set that has so much clarity to have one really unclear ruling. Like it's just, it doesn't make sense for them to have something as ambiguous as this when everything else is so black and white.
The next one that we're talking about is Invincible. So Dan doesn't like this one at all.
I like, well...
Not even a little bit. Don't believe his...
It's weird.
face.
I feel like they're trying to make Invincible relevant by making changes to other powers. Because, like, the only time Invincible is better than Impervious now is if my opposing character has Psychic Blast. Because any other character, I would much rather you have Invincible than Impervious because you're not rolling the d6 to bring my damage to 0. I'll take the -2 all day long, go up to a 5 damage, which is like a comfortable threshold. I can consistently hit you for 3. Where Impervious, if I have a 5 damage, I still only hit you for 3, but you have a 33% chance of saying it's 0 instead. 6 damage, I guess it's better. I still like the 33% chance of saying no to all the damage. If I fail, I take 1 more. You don't see 7 and 8 damages very often in the game, so we won't talk about those too much. But to backtrack and tell you what the new Invincible is you reduce damage by 2. Penetrating damage can be reduced. You take a maximum of 3 damage. So in Vulnerability, the beginning literally reads the same. You reduce damage by 2. So what they did is added 2 items to Invincible, max damage 3, you can reduce penetrating damage. So it's better than old Invincible was against 2 damage, it's worse than old Invincible was against 5 damage, and it's the same or better at 6 or higher. But you don't see higher than 6 damage very often. They made Mystic's team ability deal penetrating damage instead of unavoidable damage, so Invincible gets around Mystics, which it didn't before, I don't believe. So like that's one of the small changes they made that I feel like they're doing to try to make Invincible better, because honestly, against anything that doesn't have penetrating damage, I'd much rather have Impervious. The protection it gives you is nice, but to me it's ultimately underwhelming and I just prefer Impervious now.
Yeah. I am on the other side of the fence there. I think that it is a good balance and a different power worth taking. I wouldn't say that it's like leaps and bounds ahead of the others, but I do feel safe standing behind it. So if you've got Impervious or something on a Tentpole, since a lot of the game now is based on that Alpha Strike as far as competitive play, you've got characters who can get through Impervious and stuff all day because they're planning for it. Outwit is still going to take out Invincible, but you won't be able to be taken out by things like Exploit Weakness or by Psychic Blast, which are pretty common. So for a character who is a Tentpole with a decent amount of clicks and they have this power on their starting clicks, you're not going to be able to just run one character up and just nuke them and make them useless. They're going to take a max of 3 damage, which I think is great, especially since they're swinging at least 5 at you in order to get that. And a lot of the time somebody with that is going to have something that would normally get through something like Impervious. Otherwise, somebody is not wanting to run a character with 5 damage. You're putting a lot of points into them. You know what I mean? So you'd have somebody with 5 damage and didn't have the ability to get through a damage reducer, then that's probably not worth taking in most cases.
Well, I know it's not perfect, but I come back to Jakeem and characters that can pick, like if I have Brainiac equipped to someone, characters that can pick penetrating, now they just don't need to, like they don't care, they'll take other better powers against Invincible, which I know was kind of that way before, but it's just, I don't know, it doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I like it. I think that, and I don't really look at everything through like the meta glasses either, so it's kind of like, I understand its place and I appreciate it, I guess. So I think that it still will be good in the game. I think that it definitely has its spot in the game. I don't think that it will make impervious like useless. I think that definitely also has its place, especially in situations like that.
Now, if you give me Invincible and Shape Change or Super Senses or Kingdom Come Team Ability, yeah, that's a great combination.
That's true.
I mean, I would, because then it's impervious plus, but I don't know. It needs a little bit more, I think, to feel really good. But they are also giving it out to a lot more pieces than when it first came out, so I can understand not wanting it to be too good, but
yeah.
Oh well.
We could talk about regeneration and support at the same time, because they have buffed the minimum damage that you're going to be healing. Regeneration actually went down a little bit as far as its maximum. So regeneration used to be you roll a d6 using a power action, and then you reduce that roll by 2, and its minimum result 0. Now,
Yeah, so it was all or nothing. You could heal 4 or you heal 0.
and I would never use it because of that. I was like, regeneration is literally useless to me unless it's a free action, because I would always roll a 1 or a 2, and there was no point in me spending the action.
Getting the top result, again, you only had it was only on a 6. And you had a 33% chance of getting the bottom result. So like, the return wasn't worth the risk a lot of times.
Yeah, especially since a lot of the time that character is going to be in the middle of action. So
Yeah.
you're like, I'm going to waste the potential to make an attack, even a very weak attack, in order to just probably fail and possibly push to death or just die next turn anyway.
Mm-hmm.
In this case now, you roll 1d6 and half it, rounding up, and that is what you heal.
Basically roll a d3 for people that play games that use that terminology. I don't know why I guess they just want it really simple and only talk about d6s. But
You could have like 12-year-old kids being like, "Where is my D3? Like,
Yeah.
didn't come in the starter pack."
But to most people, it just makes sense to say roll a d3 and heal that much.
Yeah.
Like that's as straightforward as it can get. Support is minimum result 2 now, -2. So like, they understand that the difficulty is you have to hit their defense. That's where the difficulty's at. If you do, you deserve to heal them. Like, your doctor shouldn't like run in there, like cut open your wounds and start looking at it and it's like, and then just run away. Like, if he's able to do all that, he should be able to fix what the problem is. Like, it makes sense for a field medic to be able to do something like that.
Yeah. I appreciated the minimum result 1. I'm kind of surprised by this change, but I think it's great. So yeah, minimum result 2, now you just heal between 2 and 4 every time you use support. Definitely worth taking that action.
Mm-hmm.
And regeneration, I think, is also definitely worth it now, because I'm at least healing 1, I'm at least getting something, and that also means I can't just push myself to death using regeneration, which I have done way too often.
It also makes characters that have free regeneration feel a lot more satisfying, where before it's like, this might matter, whatever. Like, now it's like, hey, I know I'm getting off of this click. So, just overall, I really like the change to regen. I don't use support very often, but it's a nice little buff. So, yeah. We did not talk about Battle Fury, did we?
Nope, and I don't even know if this was an actual change, but I thought it was cool and of note.
Yeah, now it gives you immunity to Incapacitate and Mind Control. It lets you get around Shape Change, which I might have already done all 3 of those. I know it got around Shape Change. That was the only thing I cared about.
Yeah, I know it got around Shape Change and it ignored Mind Control. I don't remember if it ignored Incapacitate, but I don't think it did, and that's why I put it on here. So
I think it did, but either way, it's just a good power to talk about.
Yeah.
And again, same thing, can't be carried. And what's the other restriction?
Can't shoot.
Can't shoot.
Yeah.
Oh, Earthbound Neutralized, another power that was already bad. Like, you don't want to have it on your dial, usually bad. Not like, it had places though. Now it doesn't have a place. Because before it took away the flight symbol, so you lost all the things that went with it. Now they name what you lose, and you do not lose the flight symbol. So you can't have Earthbound Neutralized and flight. Okay, now you lose a symbol, I can carry you with my flyer. Now you can't ignore terrain and you can't carry people, but you also can't be carried, and there's no benefit. And on the flip side, your Jakeem Thunder, a lot of people would take him with a flyer, take Earthbound, and then carry Jakeem up, and then he could do his things with no action tokens. not doing that anymore.
They still have the symbol, so it counts that way for the other characters that want to interact.
Yeah.
And we still have
Oh yeah.
and Outwit.
One of my favorite powers is getting nerfed. At first, it was like a knee-jerk reaction. It's not as bad as you think, because when you really think about it, you're going to use it the same way 9 times out of 10, and that's Prom Control. Now it can only be used against attacks and breakaway rolls, nothing else. So when I thought about it, most of the time I use Prom Control just for my attacks. I mean, not even breakaway, really. But it takes out the occasional Blaze Claw's Fangs that you want to make your opponent reroll.
How Prom Control used to work, and what they've changed is, it used to be any roll that you made on your turn, or any roll that the opponent is making on their turn. So the restrictions would be on your turn, you can't reroll their super senses or their impervious because it was their roll on your turn, but you could reroll well, I guess you pretty much ended up doing about the same thing.
Yeah, like the more I think about it, the more I'm not really, like it's a knee-jerk reaction. But
yeah, they just worded it differently. It does change things like Blades, Claws, Fangs, and stuff like that.
But Blade's already got enough of a buff to not really need it.
Because there's a minimum value now, so...
It's like a knee-jerk reaction that's not as bad once you kind of break it down.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's corner cases where it is worse. So that's one you can put in the comments. Tell us where you used it a lot that you can't now.
Yeah. So again, what it does now is you can only use it on attacks and on breakaway rolls. Can't use it on any other crap.
Yep. Now, the most talked about change, I think most people know this change, but it's great. I like it a lot. I know you like it more than I do because that's been your strategy for 10 years.
Outwit.
And that's Outwit.
It's brilliant.
And you just pick a power and say no, and then they can't use it.
You could choose like some stupid character and be like, you can't use Blades, Claws, Fangs, and they don't have Blades, Claws, Fangs anywhere on their dial. They still can't use it.
Now, the reason that this is outstanding is it gets around possessors, it gets around pick a power, it gets around objects, item, everything. If I'm fighting against Jakeem Thunder, and he has Brainiac equipped, and I'm like, crap, I don't want this dude to kill me, I'm going to say, you can't take Pulse Wave, you can't take Impervious. Suddenly you have restricted everything that he can do. He has to pick either a defense power or an offense power. He's not taking Pulse Wave, so he's not getting around your powers. That's 2 Outwits that I named, but it's not, Outwit's a common enough power that you can have 2 pretty easily on your team. So that's really great. I love the fact that you get around powers that you normally couldn't. You can take out traits. If a trait grants a power previously you couldn't outwit it, now you can. So really it's just going to get rid of a lot of the defensive abuses from things like your entities, from your pick a power, which I listed this already. But it's just, I'm really excited, and I'm someone who abuses that. Like my last tournament team I had 2 entities and Supreme Intelligence on a pick a power piece. Like I had 5 sources that were not on the dial. Now you can outwit all of that if you want.
Yeah, and the key change in the wording was Outwit previously said you choose a power that the character possesses, and it would have to be showing on the dial. So if they had Super Strength on that click, you could say, I'm going to outwit that Super Strength. And then a lot of traits say can use, so it'll be this character can use Plasticity and Super Senses. Before you couldn't outwit that because the character didn't possess it, because the wording was can use and possess is different. Now you could just outwit any power. So you could be like, that character, I don't want him to use Plasticity, and just because he can use it, now you said he can't use it, and it just overrides that trait. You couldn't do that before, and that's great, because it makes it to where, especially when white powers and traits came along, Outwit felt a lot less useful, because you really had to examine their card to be like, wait, I can outwit that. Oh, I can't outwit that. Like, what the garbage, it's different for every character.
It was weak because the game evolved and it didn't. So this is finally evolving Outwit to match the game again.
Yeah, characters have become so versatile that Outwit needed to become equally as versatile.
Yeah, and so you will be seeing a lot of, I actually think you'll see some swarm teams with a lot of Outwit, like the old teams used to play are going to
I used to play that crap all the time. 400 points, I'd play at least like 8 characters.
And 4 of them had Outwit. Yeah. They all had willpower and stealth, and this was when if you didn't have Superman, you didn't ignore stealth.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And then whenever the Ultimates team ability came around, we were just like, what? And it was like, finally Marvel had some representation on that field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they got the Avengers Initiative and gave it like 6 pieces.
Yeah, and then finally it came back a little bit.
Yeah.
Like the new 400-point Thor had that. I'm surprised to see that the other day.
Yeah.
Alright, so now just general things. We've talked about most of it. You've got...
Oh, one thing I do want to point out, it was a little bit confusing. Just for a minute, we had to read, which reading sucks. The flight and phasing teleport abilities, they grant improved movement, basically everything, but you don't see the blue circle for water terrain. That's because improved movement ignores hindering terrain, automatically counts water terrain. Water terrain is basically a subset of hindering terrain that does not block line of fire and does not give the +1 to defense unless you're dolphin symbol.
And it literally says it's a subset of hindering terrain in the terrain section of the rulebook, but I think it's been that way for a long time, because ever since improved movement came out, there have been improved movement symbols with the hindering terrain, like the green, and it was an argument then, and I think it was pretty well laid out in the rulebook back then. But it was something to be pointed out now that the Powers and Abilities card shows the specific colors of the terrains that you can ignore.
Mm-hmm.
We just wanted to point that out for anybody who might be confused.
Yeah, that's just another, because new players are going to look at this and they're not going to dig through the deep rule book and find this one wording. We want to just put that there now. That's intentional, that you can phase through water. Don't think that you can't just because it doesn't have the blue circle there.
Yeah.
Because there is an improved movement for water from the dolphin symbol. That is because it only ignores the water. It does not also ignore bushes, cars, other things.
So it's just more restricted.
Mm-hmm.
But the cool things are, so basic rundown, we've already talked about some of it, but just making sure we hit all the points we wanted to talk about. We'll go over some of them again. Everyone can pick up a light object, even normal characters, so you can make object attacks without having super strength. Super strength lets you pick up heavy objects. And again, it doesn't look like ultra heavies are included in the rules anymore.
Or ultralights, because now lights can be picked up where ultralights could before.
Yeah.
And light objects still deal 1 damage, heavy objects still deal 2 additional. They're modifiers, I guess. So that hasn't changed, it's just who can use them and when.
Yeah. And then carrying, again, you have -1 movement per character that you carry. So for somebody who carries multiple things, we were talking about that earlier.
Yep.
You do obey the rule of 3, so it minuses your movement by 3
Yeah.
if you carry more than 3.
But if you do carry like 6 people and you want to perplex, it takes the sum of the modifiers. So you have to have +4 to get back up to a positive modifier because of the rule of 3. If you have like -6 and +4, you have a net of -2.
Right.
So.
Right. So -6 and then +1 from perplex, with just 1 perplex.
Yeah.
Then you're still gonna you're gonna have -5, which is still gonna end up meeting the same thing by the rule of 3. You have the +1 breakaway for smaller characters. So if you're a giant against a mini, you break away automatically too because you're 2 stages bigger. So 1 step bigger, +1 breakaway. 2 steps bigger, break away automatically. That was probably the same before.
But just clarifying again, new rules. We want to make sure that we talk about too much instead of not enough.
Right. And then dolphin symbol characters get +1 defense at range when in water. This may have also been the same, but I didn't notice it until I was trying to run through these new rules. So they act like water terrain is hindering terrain for range purposes, where other characters act like that's clear for line of fire, but hindering for movement. So
one thing we've said it a bunch is a lot of the changes that are making make enough sense to where like why weren't they already in the game, or if they were, like it's most of the changes they're making, it makes total sense, and if it wasn't that way before, it should have been already. So we're running into this like, oh, did I just not know that, or is that a new rule? Well, I think that's a good thing because it means that there's a logical train of thought that they're following on everything that they're doing.
yeah. And then the last thing here that I will be bringing up a lot, because I don't remember who told me or if this was in the previous rules or if it was just a bunch of malarkey, but I always thought it was dumb. If you have a theme team and they have prop controls, you know that you take the action because of a prop control when doing a theme team prop. So if you want to use a theme team prop, you put an action right after the action results. So in a situation where you have a named theme team, you have you get 1 prop control per character on that team who has the theme team keyword.
Per 2.
It's per 1, up to a maximum of 5.
Okay.
So if you have like 8 characters, you don't get 8. You get maximum of 5, and it's 1 per character on the team. And then when you're using it, it doesn't require that you didn't take an action yourself earlier that turn. So what I have run into is, and I don't know if it was a rule change, if it was legitimate, or if I was just told this by our local venue people, but if you have a theme team and you have a character who ran into position and used a move action to do it, you give them an action token, then you have somebody with charge or hypersonic, and they're the only person, the person who moved and put an action token on that turn, is the only person who can see him, your other character, when they make an attack, and they're the only one who's able to make a prob control. You can't do it because you already put an action token on them that turn. You can use it if you put that action token on them last turn because they didn't take their own action. In the same way, they said that you could use a character who hasn't taken an action that turn, put an action token on them because of that theme team prob control, and then later that turn also use them for their own purpose and then put an action token on them, then that wasn't illegal.
Yeah, so that's like just really complicated, and whether that was true or not, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So now we've confirmed it's simple. If you can put an action token on them, you can use the prob control.
Right. So you can use it if you have 0 or 1 action token on your character, and then you put 1 action token on them afterward, and it deals pushing damage normally. So you can't use the prob control if you can't put the action token down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's it for the major rules changes we noticed in the last 6 hours since it's been released.
Well, I have one big question. What the frick happened to the transporter ability?
Oh yeah, it just disappeared.
Yeah, so transporter ability in any form. So you have the boot, the dolphin, and the wing. For anybody who doesn't know, it grants you hypersonic speed when you use it, you minus your attack value by 2. So
and you can't use it if you're adjacent to an enemy character at the beginning of the action.
Right. So basically, you hypersonic. You have an 11 attack. You run up, you hit somebody, and you now have a 9 attack. So it's like a dull version. It also allows you to carry somebody no matter what symbol you have. So it's like somebody on a motorcycle, like Vigilante or Ghost Rider. They have the foot symbol, the boot symbol, but they're able to carry an ally because they have transporter, because they have a mode of transport.
And the reason that this was, I think, the most relevant is people with the dolphin symbol, like Black Manta, they get teleporter because they're so good at swimming that someone can like grab onto a piece of their suit and they go.
Yeah, or like walking in general because for some reason they still have it on land. But what is weird is it is gone completely. So
we've got like 50 pages of rules, nothing.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if the rules are going to be grandfathered in like the rest of Golden and Silver Age that's listed in the rule book, but it literally said nothing about it. It didn't have any pictures of the symbol or anything. It is gone. So I don't know if the ruling is going to be like, because there are still Silver Age figures and stuff that are in that.
There's golden or modern figures. Corriander, she's a modern figure with flight and teleporter with outsiders. She was incredibly efficient using it because she could use outsiders on herself to not take the -2 for her hypersonic. Now, if that's no longer a power, she has no move and attack, and she's just garbage.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if they literally are just making it to where it doesn't exist anymore. Anybody who had that power, it now has no effect other than just the normal effects of whatever symbol they had. And it just, throws transporter to the side.
Now, the flip of that is there is an excerpt in the rules that say all old characters who do not receive an errata are to be played as they were played beforehand. So someone who has a power that says it can't be countered or ignored, the new version of that is it has protected outwit pulse wave. So the intent is the same, so you play them the same. So was the intent of the teleporter to have hypersonic, or what exactly, or do we just play it how it used to be played and we just don't have any more modern characters being printed with that?
Right.
But while we have those pieces in modern, what are we supposed to do with it?
You also have some characters, combat types that have been removed and you don't see them anymore, and they're also not in the powers and abilities card.
Was Sharpshooter in?
Sharpshooter and the duo ability are no longer in there either.
And there are modern pieces with Sharpshooter still, like Speedy from the same OP kit that Corriander was in.
Yeah, and it looks like they, of course they pulled out all the merge and split abilities and stuff that came with that. It might just be like an era that has been removed due to white powers as well as the
all the improved
movement and improved targeting made Sharpshooter completely useless.
Well, no, Sharpshooter you could still shoot someone non-adjacent if you were based.
Yeah.
Now you have to have that improved with the 2 circles with the line through it. Like,
but either way, it makes it a little bit more versatile because then
Yeah.
you could say they ignore this, but they don't ignore this. So it's
yeah,
more
it takes
specific.
away the all or nothing feel of Sharpshooter, so you can pick and choose. But it's just seeing things phased out, and I know they're trying to simplify it because there are a lot of small elements and corner cases, so they're just trying to eliminate all of that. But I'd say Teleporter is the most noticeable one that just kind of
disappears.
what are we supposed to do about that?
Yeah, because the others I think make sense. You're gonna play duo like duo. You're gonna play Sharpshooter like Sharpshooter. But Transporter, I guess you'd have to play it like Transporter.
Yeah,
just like you would the others. But I mean, it just seemed real weird that there wasn't a word about it.
And it doesn't, again, for Modern, until we get an official ruling, like, do I get to use it or do I not get to use it? Like,
yeah.
What am I supposed to do?
So, get a rules judge in here. Put it in the comments.
Yeah.
Right down there.
We need a purple from the realms to tell us.
A purple.
Yeah. They're the ones that are allowed to answer rules questions, and it's official.
Ah.
Well, like, official for the ROC. I don't know if it's like WizKids official or not.
Yeah.
I don't know. But either way, if you know, let us know.
Yeah. Alright, so we probably didn't catch every change. These are a lot of the changes that are in the Powers and Abilities card. And then a lot of stuff in the core rulebook that we thought would change, like, actual gameplay. Mm-hmm. If you want to, like, sloth through the rest of that 50-page rulebook, go ahead.
Yeah.
But
we are going to play a game either tonight or soon, at least sometime in the next couple of days, that we're going to use the new rules. We'll record it and post it. That way we can get more of a feel, see if there were things we missed. So hopefully we'll have some more insight for you then. One thing I will say is if there are any changes we did not discuss that you noticed and you want us to talk about, or you want our opinion on, or just want to call us idiots for not catching it, feel free to comment that, let us know, and that way we can get it in the next one.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for watching yet another episode of NetCLIX and Chill, and we'll be surprised if you made it to this point.
But if you did, I appreciate it, and if not, you suck.
Yep.
But you don't know that.
Yeah. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.
See ya.